Hey, Practice Biopsy, I have a great guest today. This is Dr. Brett Kessler, who is on the board of trustees with the ADA. So, especially to a lot of younger dentists, the ADA is kind of like a mystery. It's something that, like older dentists or the dental school says, you got to sign up and pay your membership dues. But we don't really get that much exposure to see what the ADA is all about. A lot of us don't. You're the first person, Brett, that I've ever talked to in person, I believe, that's associated with the ADA. So, like,
Wow.
where are you guys at? And I know that
Okay.
you guys do a lot of stuff, but I know that the typical dentists out there, particularly young dentists, don't really know what's going on. So this is like my way to help both parties make an informal introduction with Practice Biopsy to say, hey, this is someone involved with the ADA. And here's a little bit of information. So Brett, can you just tell us a little about yourself, your background as a dentist, and how you came to be on the board of trustees with the ADA?
Sure. Thanks for having me, D'Angelo. It's great to meet you and look forward to this conversation. You know, I was once a young dentist myself. Seems seems surreal now, but the when my first job, my boss told me that if we're to remain a profession, everyone has to give something. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, well, very least you have to be a member of the ADA, and I'm going to pay for your ADA membership. And so he paid for my ADA membership, but I wasn't involved at all. Much like you, I was, busy trying to, learn how to be the best dentist I could be and get on with my life. And, I had no idea what the ADA did. But what was one of the crucial enlightenments for me was, back in the day, I was a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, and I was an active drug addict and alcoholic. And in my third year of practice, I hit a bottom that scared me enough to seek help. And it was affecting my life in a way that it was not the preferred future I was looking for. And so I called actually a representative from the Michigan Dental Association, and I was practicing in Flint, Michigan at the time. And the well-being program in the state of Michigan, that call directed me to treatment, and I attribute that call to saving my life. And the only way that happens is through some kind of organization that can support it. Okay, and the MDA and its parent organization, the ADA, was there for me when I needed it most.
Mm-hmm.
And I became, not an avid ADA person at the time, but when I moved to Michigan a few years later, I'm sorry, I moved to Colorado a few years later, and I applied for a license there. And when I applied, I had to answer the questions: had I ever, did I ever, was I ever?
Mm-hmm.
And and I had to answer them yes, because that's what recovery is. It's about honesty and integrity and stuff like that. And so I answered them correctly, and they put me on probation. And I was like, probation? Why am I on probation? And, well, we don't know what to do with you. And so, okay. And I just figured I was going to be monitored by the licensing board
Right.
for random drug tests and stuff like that. And I welcomed it all. I was sober for a little over a year at the time, and I knew it was going to happen. And I just wanted to be in Colorado. So this was the cost of doing business. I was good with it. A couple months later, I got a letter of admonition from the state of Michigan because I didn't let them know I was being disciplined in another state with another license.
Wait, what's that
I was
letter
like,
that you got? A letter of what?
letter of admonition, which means
Uh-huh.
a slap on the hand. Okay.
Okay.
And but it goes on my permanent record. Okay. What I
Okay.
didn't know in Colorado, that, my probation was a disciplinary act, even though they didn't intend it to be. It went to the National Practitioners Data Bank, and anywhere that I had a license got notified, and I had still had an active license in Michigan. So basically I got in trouble for seeking help. And
Ah.
and that pissed me off, per se, excuse me. And so I called the state of Colorado and told them I was getting in trouble because I didn't tell them I got in trouble, that I didn't realize I got in trouble in the state of Colorado. And I didn't want to get in trouble again in the state of Colorado for not telling them I didn't get it, that I got in trouble in the state of Michigan. So it was a
Yeah.
big circle. So when I had that call, I with the board, the state board president, he and I became friends after that. He's like, this is not what we intended for you. This is, um, and ended up, I went through my monitoring and everything. And when I finished with my monitoring, they asked me to become the state well-being program director for the state of Colorado. So now I was that person answering phone calls for people who were struggling. And it was very, meaningful to me. And I was, very honored to be able to do that and help my colleagues. And it was funded through the Colorado Dental Association, and I was an active member, with that. And I started out from there. I started a program for recovering alcoholics and drug addicts in the city of Denver. This treatment center called Sobriety House that treated the homeless population. But what it did is it got them off the street, got them sober, and gave them vocational training. And but they didn't have great smiles. They didn't have teeth, and they had infection. It was really,
Mhm.
even though they were clean from their substance abuse disorders, they still had the scars of their addiction on their face. And so I started a program where I can help those residents of that program, and I gave them free dentistry. And when I
Did
started
you do
doing,
that in your office, or did you go to them?
I did it in my office as a charitable foundation that I started. Okay. And so when I did that, other treatment centers found out about it and started calling me and asking me to do the same. And I was like, I can't do it for everybody. So I called the Metro Denver Dental Society and asked them if they knew of anyone that was doing this kind of work. They're like, no, but let's write an article about it and see if we can, get people to volunteer. And so they did, and two or three dentists actually started volunteering at different treatment centers and helping them as well. And then we started, Metro Denver Dental Society actually started a foundation called the Smile Again program that was based off of this model, and I was instrumental in that. From there, I was just part of their community access to care committee because I felt like this was the best way I can, make a difference and help the community as a dentist outside of my private practice. I felt a real big need to help my people, and so I was pretty active with that. A couple of years later, methamphetamines hit the scene, and meth mouth was a big story,
Mhm.
and it trickled from the East Coast and the West Coast, and and the news stories came to the center of the country. And when the reporters in Colorado found out about it, they wanted to know if anyone was treating meth mouth, so they called the dental society, and they called me and asked me if I knew of this thing called meth mouth, and I smiled and said, yeah, I've been treating it for years. Would you like to go on TV and talk about it? And I'm like, no. So at this point, I had started my own practice, and I was it was a kind of a boutique type practice. It was a cosmetic practice. We did a lot of reconstructive dentistry, a lot of aesthetic dentistry. It was 100% fee for service, and I was trying to establish myself as a veneer guy, not
Mhm.
meth mouth guy. And but I asked some of my mentors at the time, what do you think about this? And they're like, Brett, there's so few times where dentistry gets put in the spotlight in a positive view, and this is a really positive view. And you know
Yeah.
what, Brett, there's so few times that the media puts addiction recovery in a positive view, and this is a positive view. So really rethink that. And I ended up doing it, but I talked to the reporter first. I said, I'll only do this if you focus on my patients and not on me. And she was like, fine, no problem. And I asked a couple of my patients if they would, and these were graduates of Sobriety House, and they couldn't wait to go on TV and tell their stories and tell how their teeth, me fixing their teeth was instrumental in, improving their self-esteem and their ability to work and get a job and face the world. And it was really cool. And then it was a great story. And then five other news outlets in Colorado did a similar version of the story, different channels and stuff across the state. And one of the stories got picked up by CNN, and it went on headline news one weekend 19 minutes after the hour, there's Brett, doing his dentistry and talking about, recovery, addiction, and dentistry.
Nice.
And that was really neat. A few weeks after that, the ADA called me and asked me if I would come to Washington, D.C. to testify before Congress on a bill they were trying to push through that would fund treatment for people who were suffering from meth mouth and other addictions. And I was like, absolutely. And I went and I got to talk to Congress about this. We ended up not winning the bill, but when I came home, the Colorado Dental Association, started viewing me as more than just someone who treated people in recovery. They kind of viewed me as a leader. No one in Colorado had ever testified before Congress, and all of a sudden I was on
You
the
had you
leadership
had some
track.
really unique actions that you took and things that you did that were
Yeah,
worth talking about. They got people's attention.
yeah. And then, I ended up being president of the Colorado Dental Association in 2013, 2014. And in that period of time, I was on the team that helped to create an adult dental benefit in the Medicaid space in Colorado. So now 300,000 people had dental homes that didn't have it before. And I saw the power of what we can do together as an organization to help treat the communities that we live in. And it was an amazing, one of my most proud projects to be a part of. And so from there, the ADA, viewed me as some sort of leader too, and they appointed me to the Council on Dental Benefits. So now all of a sudden I'm working on reforming the dental benefit programs in the country. And the
Can you
um
talk about that at all, or is that not
yeah,
something?
sure,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
what does the reform of the dental benefits look like? Like,
So
what's the
this was
goal? How do
back
we want to
in
change it?
2014 through 2018. I was on the council and I ended up becoming vice chair of that. So things that came up during my period of time was the non-covered services bills. Okay, so it where insurance companies can dictate a fee for a procedure they don't even cover. So let's say I do veneers and it's not part of that insurance plan, that benefit plan, and they say, well, since you're part of this benefit plan, you can only charge $800 for a veneer, but we're not going to cover any of it.
Mhm.
That to me was egregious. And so we did a lot of advocacy to help states change that in their State Practice Act. Another one that came up was the disallow clause, meaning that there's a difference between denial and disallow. Denial is it doesn't fall in within the scope of the benefit plan contract that the company signed with the dental benefit company. That's a denial. Disallow, basically, if you did an extraction and you charged for the extraction, but let's say it's the number two, and part of the buccal plate came out, and then you had to smooth out that buccal plate and do no sinuses, whatever, but you had to do an alveoloplasty there to remove a tori. And so we all of a sudden out of nowhere would start to get letters from the insurance company saying, um, you're not allowed to do this. You need to refund the patient. Patient also got the letter,
Of course. Yeah.
and so it was it drove a wedge between the relationship between the patients and the doctors, because the insurance companies held the purse. And so that, and I got to, speak in front of the National Association of Dental Plans and tell them that this program sucks. Okay, this is driving a wedge between our patient base and hurting our practices. It's hurting the patients, and it's a procedure that we not only should be allowed to do, but are obliged to do in the best interest. And but they said, well, you could bring the patient back 2 weeks later and do it, and you get paid for it. I'm like, that's bullshit.
That's not how it
Okay, that is
works.
absolute bullshit, and that's what I told them. And we got some traction with that. I actually wrote an article in JADA on Ethical Moment on the dental benefit companies have a dentist working for them that's called a dental consultant. And the dental consultant, because of the disallow clause, in my opinion, is liable for diagnosing things without ever seeing a patient, and that's unethical. If they're disallowing treatment without ever seeing the patient, that's, practicing dentistry
Yeah.
blindly. And, and that took some traction, and it changed the trajectory of the of that clause in the benefit world. Okay. And so, things like that are really only a large organization with a voice can do that. Okay. And it may not affect me, as a practicing dentist over on, the corner here in Colorado. It may not affect me directly, or I don't think I can make a voice that would be heard, but look at me. I was just like you 25 years ago, and I just kind of, I got pissed off at things, and I decided to do something about it. And I found that the organized dentistry at the Michigan Dental Association, the Metro Denver Dental Society, the Colorado Dental Association, and the ADA all had a voice and leverage to make things happen. Our most recent victory was the question 2 in Massachusetts. And this was a really big deal. So California did something like this 7 or 8 years ago, and we're going to talk about the medical loss ratio. Okay, do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so in the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, they mandated that all medical insurance plans have a threshold where 85% of, maybe it's, I'm sorry, 80, yeah,
So
85%
of the
of
premiums
all
has to actually be
benefits,
spent on providing care.
right, all benefits collected has to go towards patient care. Okay, and they did that for medicine. They didn't do it for dentistry. Okay, California passed this law about 7 or 8 years ago, where they wanted just transparency on the dental loss ratios in the programs and all the benefit programs in the state of California. And they found some that were at the 80, 85 percentile range, but they also found a bunch that were in the 20 to 30%
Mhm.
range. Okay. And, and they didn't ask for anything other than transparency, but the insurance commissioner saw that and said, hey, clean up your shit. Okay. Is basically what he
Basically,
said.
yeah.
And they got, they got everybody, so what does that do? That increases utilization, right? So if, 80% was going towards profits, and 20, so they had to reform their business model to make sure that patients were being cared for, or they had to return the money to the people who are paying it,
Mhm.
for their benefits. And so now in Massachusetts, an orthodontist, decided to do this through a ballot initiative. Okay. And so instead of trying to go through Congress, go through their state house and Senate, they couldn't get anyone to take it and to champion that bill. Okay, so they took it to the streets and they got the signatures, and it went on the ballot, and the voters voted. 80% of the voters of Boston or Massachusetts thought this was a good idea. And so now it's a mandate in the state of Massachusetts that all programs have to abide by the 83% threshold, okay, or return money to the people who are paying.
That's great.
And so we're taking that, the tenets of that bill and passing it around the country, and trying to push each state is has their own practice act, so each state has to do this on their own, but we have the template at the, we being the ADA, to the playbook on how to do it. And so each state is taking this on right now. And what does that mean? It'll be increased utilization of the benefit plans from your patients, and therefore you will probably have a better better programs you're working with. So so that's the kind of thing that is, in my opinion, the biggest value from the ADA, from an advocacy standpoint, from a, how does it help your practice? Obviously, it's very important that they have the wellness initiatives, because that's what saved my life and the lives of thousands of others. And it's still in place. If anyone is struggling, please, reach out to me, reach out to the ADA, reach out to your dental association, state association program.
Is that
Um,
wellness initiative in every state currently?
yeah, it's in all 50 states. There's resources for everyone. We're in a kind of an ugly time right now with mental health and our colleagues. And I personally know
I've
of five
noticed.
suicides, 5 dentist suicides in the last 8 weeks.
Yep.
And it's
I
really,
with through my platform, I get to know a lot of dentists and colleagues, and I also know of similar numbers in the last
yeah.
couple months.
Yeah, and it breaks my heart when I hear that, because resources are available. I know we're not going to get to everybody, but you don't have to struggle alone. There are, people there who've been through what you've been through, blah blah blah, metaphorically, and we want to be there to, answer the phone, when, to guide you through whatever you're going through. So that's one thing that's really important. The ADA, I could go on and on. I'm the chair of ADA's Science and Research Institute, and it's basically an unbiased science and research institute. So when you get your the dental practice rep from your dental supply company comes and says, "Hey, try this new glue. It's the best thing ever." And they show you a graph of how it's, this high,
Yeah,
this one's this
they
high.
are all the
Right.
best.
Right.
Whichever one they're
And
selling you is the best.
it's all industry-based research, that's there to show. They're only going to show you what they want to show you, and we're there to test things and really provide what's the best thing out there. So we're in our 4th year of existence right now, and it's kind of like a startup company, but we're doing some amazing things. We had over 100 periodicals, journals published last year, in various platforms, and including JADA. It's really gonna keep things honest,
Yeah,
and we're looking to do clinically relevant um, research that will benefit you as a practitioner. So that's what we're doing with that. I'm also involved in the diversity and inclusion committee of the board, and trying to open the eyes of the old guards that may not be as may not see a need to be better about welcoming all sizes, shapes, and colors, basically, is the best
yeah.
way I can say it. And we're making some big inroads in that, about evolving the culture to
When
be
you
more
hold one of
welcoming.
these positions, Brett, like on
Hmm.
the board of trustees or on the Colorado Dental Association, what is the time commitment? And do any of these positions or chairs have pay, or are they volunteer?
Sure. So I've been practicing this whole time. Okay. When I've been practicing full time up till the point of right after COVID hit.
Hmm.
When COVID hit, it was hard for me to practice full time.
Hmm.
um, and by the way, I was involved in the whole COVID discussions. Being on the
Yes.
board was a very interesting time as we transitioned through that, through that black swan event, is what we call it. And it was a very difficult time for many, but I was sure glad I was at the table,
Mhm.
fighting for what we call best practices. And I think the ADA, and this may be controversial to a lot of people, but we did a really good job,
Mhm.
to work our way around, not spreading the disease, and learning how to practice in a very safe way. So, I felt the dentistry was really shine. We were shining bright during that time.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy I was at the table.
Yeah.
So when after that happened, I only work about 6 to 8 days a month now, because of my obligations with the ADA trustee job. I do get paid for that, so it's not a financial hit. I'm one of the younger people on the board. I'm 54 years old, and most of the people on the board are you know 10, 8, 10, 12, 20 years older than me.
Okay. So most
Most
of the board
many
is
are
like 60s and 70s.
I'd say about, yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of us in the
So
50s. There's a
this is a
couple of us
paid
in the
position, but
50s,
if
but
you're like if you have like a leadership role in the MDA or like the Colorado Dental Association, are those paid or are they volunteer?
they're basically volunteered. You get paid a little bit,
Okay.
but the
So you
the
would get
demand
you
on
more so get paid like once you're ADA Board of Trustees level. That's when.
right. But the demand on your time at the state wasn't nearly as much as it is at as a
Okay.
trustee. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that the ADA trustee position was a paid position when I took it. And at our orientation, they had to sign a W-2. I'm like, what's this for? And they're like, you got paid for this. We get paid for this? Yeah. But that's how much I care about um, organized dentistry and keeping it going. That I wanted, and I feel like I have a skill, or I have a skill set that is necessary in driving the messages forward from organized dentistry, and that's why I did it. And if I took a couple of years off of practice, or slowing my practice down, I set myself up to be able to do that
Nice.
in any event. And if I didn't get paid for this, it would have been a little bit tougher, but whatever. I would have still continued to do what I'm doing because
Nice.
it really means a lot to me.
So when you guys like are tackling issues, what's the process? Like, does the ADA like set rules, recommendations? Do you guys have like a big vote like the Senate? Like, what does it look like when an issue comes up? How do you determine what's an important issue to tackle? And then what's your process for making a change?
So there's a couple of different ways that happens. So many things that happen at the state level. Every state has their own process, so that's different than the ADA level. At the ADA level, there's the House of Delegates, which is the supreme governing body of the ADA, and every district it's divided into the country's divided into 17 districts. Every district will bring a resolution to the House of Delegates to debate. Okay, and if it passes, then it becomes a policy of the ADA, and usually that has the resolution has directions on what it wants to accomplish, and so that puts it into action. We're changing our business model. We've changed our business model to what we call a strategic forecasting business model, where we have little subgroups of experts, both geographic and it's these subgroups are representative from all over the country, and they have skill sets that are focused on um, certain issues and stuff like that. So we've got subsets now that things will move much faster. Okay, whereas the House of Delegates was the once a year entity where we get together and direct the policies and stuff like that. But now it could be done much quicker,
Mhm.
and we're in the process of setting that up, and it's going to make us much more nimble and agile. I know those are words you hear a lot of, but we need to be more nimble and agile because the world of business, the world of dentistry moves really
Moves
fast, and we
quickly.
want to be able
Yeah.
to be on top of that.
So as far as like
Um,
being agile with the issues, I mean, kind of circles back to what I asked a few moments ago. Like, how do you guys determine what issues we should be addressing now? Like, do the people on the board just kind of keep their ear to the ground, like see what their friends are saying, or is there like a submission process where dentists can submit things that are their concerns and you guys review them? Like, how do you guys determine what the issues worth spending time on are?
So yes, all of that. We keep our ear to the ground to see what's going on. What's the pulse of the profession right now? We want to be on the leading edge of that. And so there's two-prong approach. We've got, part of our board is looking at forward-thinking things. So, I'm on a task force where we're talking about what is dentistry going to be like 10, 15, 20 years from now,
Mhm.
and what do we want it to look like? So we start shaping it. So that's part of it, so proactive approach. And then there's a reactive approach too, where any member can bring up an idea through their delegates, through their states, and and it comes to us as um, as a resolution. The ADA has a bunch of councils that have representation from every state, every district. Not every state, but every district, and those representatives bring up issues, and the councils start working on things. The councils do a lot of the work, and the board then approves it, and the House approves it. The House directs it, the board directs those councils. So you know, it's we are a large organization. We have 160,000 members, and not very many are active. It's usually 10 to 20% of any organizations where all the action is, and but the other 80 to 90% value the work that we're doing, because if we're not here and if we're not doing the work we're doing, dentistry will change. Okay. And, the legal aspects that we are bound to practice under the state practice acts, most states don't have dentists in their legislatures.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so who's going to tell them how to manage us, how to what are the parameters for best practices? Only dentists can tell them that, and so we have to be there to do that. I bring that up because we're doing that in the state of Colorado right now. We're updating our Dental Practice Act every 10 years. We do that, and so we've in Colorado have convened all the different oral health entities in Colorado to discuss the Practice Act, to see what they like, what they don't like, what do we want to change, where do we want to see it for the next 10 years, so that best practices are in place for us, that we can serve our communities in the best possible way.
Nice. Um, what would you say like a new dentist coming out of school in the next couple years should really be prepared for, like with the direction that the profession is headed? Like I know you guys forecast like what are the next 10, 20 years. What should like a new graduating dentist be prepared for as far as changes that may occur in the profession?
That's a great question. First of all, I want to just take a time out and just say that every young dentist, the work that I'm doing right now in the advocacy world, that my board is doing in the advocacy world, it's not going to affect me as much as it's going to affect you.
Yeah.
And so you have a voice, and I first of all encourage you to use that voice.
Yeah.
Because it's your future, it's your job, it's your profession, and in your career. And the best way to have the best career possible is to be there as a voice to direct it. Okay, so I want to say that first. So, what we've seen, and you've seen it too, private practice model is still there and it's still viable, but it's that practice model demographics is shrinking, and we're seeing a lot more consolidation. That I don't know if that answers your question. When I had my private practice, I sold it in 2018 to a small DSO, and I was their chief dental officer for the couple of years that I worked with them. And it's an interesting model, because my dental supply people, like 2 weeks after I sold my practice,
You
like,
get
oh,
the
you're part
huge
of a
discount.
DSO. Yeah, like, here, we're going to give you a 40% discount on yours. I'm like, really? Where were you 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And so it was really, a solo practice is still going to be a great way to practice, but you have to find ways to be creative, to really, be profitable. Okay. And, but I'm not, and I loved it. I loved being in private practice, and I love being part of a DSO, part of a bigger group too. So that definitely is playing a bigger part in the practice of dentistry. I see medicine and dentistry coming together in a bigger way. We're seeing it right now in the sleep apnea airway issue modality, because dentists have found a way to really help our patients and get paid for it. And the key was and get paid for it. And I think that's going to be an entry into how and I learned this when I did my GPR, that I saw how the status of your oral health can affect systemic problems, and how systemic problems can affect the oral health. And so we learn in dental school that the body's connected to the mouth, and but we get out and it's disconnected somehow. So I see that coming together in a bigger way. And there are some DSOs that are actually starting practice models with physicians and dentists under the same roof.
Hmm.
And so if you're a diabetic patient, you automatically get sent to the dentist for an exam, and most likely periodontal treatment, because we know that treating periodontal treatment will help control the blood sugars in a diabetic patient, especially type 2 diabetic patient. This has been going on in the public health world for many years. FQHCs have been doing this, and it's a model that will, I think, spread to the private practice sector in a bigger way. So that's another thing that I see as a definite evolution for the practice of dentistry. Third would be the including of the brand new technologies. In the last 5 years, after I sold my practice, I'm blown away at the amount of technologies that are available with CAD cams have been there, but now the digital printing, CT scans and the ability to really see things that I couldn't see with a two-dimensional X-ray. I feel like I've been asleep at the wheel for 5 years and technology has passed me by. And if I were to start a new practice, I would invest all in the new technologies, not to wow the patients, but really to allow, to give them great services at a fair price. That I couldn't do with the traditional dentistry that I was practicing 10 years ago. So it's a really fun time to be a dentist. I'm excited to see where we go in the next 5 to 10 years with that.
Great, Brett. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your time with me bright and early this morning. I had a great
So it's
time on the
5:30 in the
podcast.
morning in Colorado. I just want you guys to
Yeah.
know that.
Like I said, I like to keep this right around 30 minutes. We're coming right up about 45 minutes or so
Oh, wow.
here. So you'll see this posted later, and I really thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you. I just want to reemphasize, reach out if you're struggling. Reach out, reach out, reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.